Hello and welcome to the Kuyumungi Institute, our Q&A Conversation for Exploration series. I'm Paul Robert, the Executive Director and President of the Institute, and along with my wife, Laura Lee, the Director of Research, Education, and Outreach, and of course on behalf of our Board of Directors, our advisors, our volunteers, and supporting members, we want to thank you for joining us today. The Kuyumungi Institute is an independent, nonprofit research organization committed to researching consciousness in the human experience, following the footsteps of our founder, anthropologist Dr. Felicitas Goodman. And as an educational institution, we take an open approach, and we invite scholars in related fields to help broaden the scope of our own work and exploration, and that's why we call this Conversation for Exploration. And on these weekly Sunday discussions, we've had a full spectrum of topics from neuroscience and anthropology, archaeology, archaeoastronomy, ecology, philosophy, shamanism, rituals, the hero's journey, roots of theater, art history. It goes on and on and on from
We
the
try
arts.
to do the scope from the arts to the sciences.
Arts to the sciences. Yeah. And you're welcome to visit our website, kuyumungiinstitute.com. All of our presentations are free. And as a nonprofit, of course, we invite you to become a supporting member. And we want to thank you, the community members who continue to support the mission of the Kuyumungi Institute. Today, we want to go deeper into the experience of synchronicity, those seemingly unrelated experiences but appear to have meaning. I mean, how many times in your life have you experienced an extraordinary, timely coincidence that seems as though it was by design? Synchronicities seem as if they are strategically orchestrated and aligned, maybe delivering a message, providing guidance, providing reassurance that we're on the right path. Synchronicity experiences include seeing or hearing meaningful names, numbers, words, symbols, and being in the right place at the right time. And it does appear that synchronicity experiences open a doorway to an inner path of self-transformation and personal growth. And could this be like a universal language, a deeper resonance of itself, of life itself, resonating within us? I guess I'm with those who believe that synchronicity is a powerful wink from the universe telling us that, yes, we are on the right track.
Well, what's so fun about synchronicity and coincidence and serendipity is that we all experience it.
Yeah.
And we all have to pause and wonder, what did that mean? And is that a nod from the universe? Are we in dialogue with the universe? And what is it telling us and nudging us forward? Our guest today, Berry Beitman, MD, wrote Meaningful Coincidences. Thank you for sending me a copy. How and why synchronicity and serendipity happen. And what I like about his research, and this is his second interview with us, is he breaks it down into the anatomy of these experiences, the different types. Are you a human GPS, for example, he asks. What are the various types? There's a wide range. The patterns. Are you as sensitive? How do you become more sensitive and invite more of these into your life? What are the stats on this? Are there problematic ones? Are there just confounding ones? And then, what does it all mean? I agree, this larger landscape, this larger hand that looks like it's co-writing our stories with us, that we're in direct communication with the all. Are we a cell in the mind of God, right? Are we all connected? And what is that connective tissue? This matrix in which we all operate. How does it cross-connect? This cosmic picture, the cosmic clock that lines us all up for these interactions. It's a very exciting question. And then he goes into how to write, how to tell a story, how to share it in the most effective way. Mm-hmm. So we're going to hear all of this in his newest research, and also who were the credentialed researchers. We like their other work. Why don't we like this work? Because they have much to say about this larger picture of the universe. So, there's an emerging story that is gaining more and more acceptance for this deep connection that we have with the all. And it's really time for science to embrace it. And I think we're well on our way with this. And so let us introduce Berry Beitman. Joins us from Maryland. Hi, Bernie. Congratulations on your newest book. You want to put your microphone down so we can hear you? Good to have you back. So many
Thank you.
stories. Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
many stories we can go on and on with. But first, tell us what's new in your research. What have you been? You're always pushing the envelope with this. It's a long
That was
list.
a beautiful introduction from each of you. I really appreciated hearing that because it gave me a much deeper idea of how each of you think about meaningful coincidences. And it's so important when talking with people about meaningful coincidences to know how they conceptualize it, because that's what you're dealing with, a belief, somebody's belief.
Mhm.
And believing is seeing, as we know a lot now about things in politics, for example, but it's also about synchronicity. You got to believe it in order to see it. And the two of you gave an introduction that I hope continues to encourage people to do that.
Um, so you're writing about coincidences and um, why? What led you to take this up as your life's work?
The
I know you've had
two,
many of your own. I know that early on this started in your childhood, having these coincidence moments.
the
But why take it up? What is the ultimate mission here?
Yeah.
oh, good. We're looking at the purpose of it rather than how I got into it.
Yes.
Much better,
What
much
is your
better to try
quest
to.
here?
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, because I can go through all kinds of, yeah, blah blah blah. So it's teleology we're doing today, which is being, what future am I being drawn to?
Ah,
Because it's
okay.
out there already. Jung was a teleological guy, and there are other ways of thinking about purpose, but I'm big into the how you conceptualize the future. And so if you get some hints that maybe there is something that you're trying to figure out that's there already, like the story of traveling the world and finding what you need right in your own home, uh, or your own town. There's a good serendipity story that's just like that. So if you can recognize that, then you find out what you're doing.
You turn on your inner GPS and you start heading that way. And there's a lot of
Hey,
trust
hey, wait,
involved.
wait. Inner GPS. Turn on your inner GPS.
Yeah.
Now, this person who also quotes her father, came up with the term inner GPS as compared to my human GPS, which is what I got in the book.
Ah.
And so here you have two similarities with her besides being blonde, which I guess is a something, but whatever that means. Appearing blonde, I don't know which one it is for her either, but it's like appearing it. And so we got three of them right here. Um, and this last one is really interesting.
Well, I think that we have all the technology right within us, right, to navigate. We're well equipped to navigate this world. Our current society kind of discourages that because it wants to control us, is my opinion, but we have all the equipment within. So I think that's a lifelong quest. That's a sacred duty. Let's turn it all on and navigate with our souls, right? With the larger hand that co-writes with us. Let's listen to it. Let's be in dialogue with it. Let's go on the adventure. And so this is all part of that. This is looking at the synchronicity, being mindful of it, understanding it, trusting it. That's part of the journey, I would think.
Well, that's where I differ with you. Not that I
Ah,
don't. That's not that I don't agree to some degree. Uh, it's like, how did your institute get started? There are multiple factors that go into that,
oh
and here we're
yeah.
talking about a thing about how the world works, because we have some concepts about how the world works. And I've come with although it's binary on this planet, black and white, sun and day and white, day and night and stuff. Um, although it's binary here, I also think there's a lot of continua involved also. So that when I look at what causes, how I try to explain meaningful coincidences, is there is a mystery. I mean, sometimes I like stop and say, "Hey, baby, this is rigged, man. I mean, this is rigged. How did this happen?" That's my way of saying it, because I'm still have a bit of the street in me. Is
Yeah.
like that's it. That's the way I'm. That's the way it seemed to me,
Right.
because it happened like that. But there's some of it is so much my responsibility, and that varies too. So I have something to do with it. And there's also
Oh, I'm not
random.
disagreeing with you.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Continue.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
well, I really appreciate your summary of my book. I mean, I've never, nobody's ever done that before, so it's kind of fun to hear it back. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
So go ahead.
I was going to say there's always that the poetic language of it all. I like having the mystery of life, just like we can say that the sun rises and we know that the sun is not rising, but we agree to use that terminology to understand these things. And so I'm enjoying the idea of the mystery of synchronicity in my life, and embracing it as part of that poetic nature of life itself. Something that goes
The
beyond.
dance.
Even though I know
Yeah.
you've approached this from a scientific perspective, and so finding that meeting point between the mysteries and what science can tell us and what science can't tell us, and
What I
what
see
that
Bernie
pathway
doing is paving a way to understand and embrace the synchronicity, to explain it. We all have it show up in our life, whether you are of that mental set or not, but
Right.
you're helping to pave the way to accept it and embrace it and ask, what does it mean? Right? What is the mission with your book? Let's ask you.
well, this just what you're talking about. I want to get to the purpose of this because
Yeah, yeah.
what I'm doing, but starting with with getting people to pay attention to them is a lot of what I'm doing. And then I can do I'm doing some webinars or something with where it's maybe gets more far out, which is what I like better. But my job, like there was an article about my book, a good one, in of all places, the Wall Street Journal, last Wednesday, and
Ah,
it it was well done by a really good writer, and it was I like, hey, there's my book, but it's, oh, hey, there's my book back there.
yeah.
But the best part of it was that it was about coincidences. It described some really good coincidences in there and
Ah,
brought some research in that I didn't know about. So she helped advance this, let me say, new field with doing such a good job because she's experiences a lot of them herself. That's why she got into it.
mm-hmm.
So that's my
So,
job.
yeah, that's your job, is just helping people embrace it and understand it.
Yeah.
What do you mean by what is your larger purpose? You wanted to finish that.
Well, you skipped over the personal statement or whatever I called it at the toward the end, and in which I talk about the collective human organism. And in your opening remarks, you were talking about the tissue that holds things together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for various reasons, and I have lots of them, I I prefer to stay with the psychosphere, which I think is between the ionosphere and the Earth's crust, where, as you know, Schumann's resonance bounces around. And I'm suggesting that there's enough mystery right there around us
Right.
that I'd rather like try to look at that first and think maybe it's a hologram, maybe it's a kind of there's a way of looking about how the whole thing works. But that's where I start thinking about consciousness.
And the mechanics of how this all connects us, then.
Yes, and yes, and I can't thank you because there's so many people now say we know we're all connected, and we kind of look at it and say we're all connected. But what coincidences can do with interpersonally is help people see the hidden connections between them. If they illuminate the hidden currents that unite and connect us. So we try to be able to see how that works interpersonally because you can there's a lot of ways to increase interpersonal connectiveness, and that's one of them. When you can have those things together and be able to know that it happened together, it's like a dance. I mean, part of the reason it's fun to go to dances because that kind of happens sometimes. At least what I do out there, I'm kind of running around just kind of doing with my thing, and then oh look, there's somebody to dance with, and we have a wonderful time, and then it goes away.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah. I keep wondering, when we're out there colonizing space, is each planet going to have its own Schumann resonance? Is that going to be a given with each planet? Is it going to set it up? Are you going to be tuned into that planet? Does that planet embrace you and kind of get you into its sphere and start to mold you? It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Those questions.
Well, I'm really glad that we have talked more than two podcasts worth other times too, like with G and stuff. So I get to see how you think and how your institute thinks, probably. And I'm a, I went to a liberal arts college where they taught you lots of different things. That's what you are to me. And you said it, you're both, you do the arts and sciences as well
Mhm.
as the humanities, which this is mostly what this is. So anyway, study of human beings. So you do that. I have come to recognize that I am a one note samba, that it all falls underneath this coincidence thing. And it's a weird experience. I like to hear about like that skirt you were telling us about. That
Yeah.
skirt
Oh,
where you
yeah.
pick up the skirt and there's I didn't know what you were gonna say. And there's nobody
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
and
okay.
and
Yeah.
there's nobody, I would say nobody visible there.
Right.
Because
Oh, thank you. Good clarification.
what's intriguing about that, that's really intriguing for me, and you probably too, is where does the ethereal meet the material?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And that seems to be an example of where it happens. So it would be fun then to try to see how a spirit is able to like move the dress by being maybe directly in it, or is it, I don't like puppet strings for that, I like something really in there, but that's just my preference.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, part of you breaking down coincidence would be let's go to some fertile ground where something interesting is happening, where there's some connection, and start to analyze it. I mean,
Yeah.
right? So, what have you found? Let's start with the anatomy of coincidence. And do you want to just quickly define terms? Because there are people who argue over what coincidence is versus
Synchronicity.
serendipity versus synchronicity. How do you define the terms? That's a good place to start.
That is usually where I have to start, and that's where I've started the book too, is not only what they mean, but I like talking about where they came from, what's their derivation or etymology. That's what I do in the first part, because I like words, and these are important words. So let's define them a little historically. So then it's like defining the words themselves operationally. That's the next one, next chapter. And you mentioned coincidence, serendipity, synchronicity. People blah, blah, put them
Yeah.
all together. I mean, that's a serendipity. That's a synchronicity. I like that. This is kind of cartoonish, but in Europe they study serendipity in academics. In the United States, they study synchronicity kind of in outer space and at various degrees.
Hmm.
Okay.
And they don't like each other. I mean, it's a cartoon, but there's a snoot over in Europe, and there's the missing something over in the United States. So that's the kind of culture that I get to play with, because I use the term coincidence to cover both serendipity and synchronicity. And why did you do that? Whatever you're calling me, so let's call me Bernie today. Why did you do that? Why did you do that word? And the
Because
reason I use,
coincidence is going to happen whether you attach meaning to it or not. It's just a fact, right? And then,
oh, that's good. That's a good answer.
Where were you going to go with that?
Um, well, I like hers,
well, to invoke
because
synchronicity, you're getting into Jung, right? You're getting into
well,
meaning, you're getting into
well,
cosmology.
we are. So it's if the two things, the two events come together, and they're going to happen all the time. Like we're having a
Yeah.
coincidence now.
Yeah.
So that's very important to say. That's the base of
Hmm.
this,
Hmm.
and the base of this is coincidence. And I did the same thing with psychotherapy, which is like too much to talk about, but I talk about the noun rather than the adjective. In this one, I talk about the adjectives rather than the noun. And what the modifying adjective, the word before it, is what's key to this. Coincidence is a neutral term, as you say,
Yeah.
blah, 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 happen all the time. So I put, people put different adjectives, and meaningful is the one that I picked for various reasons. It's the best description. But there are amazing coincidences, or how did that happen? Coincidences. What are the odds of that coincidences? A lot of like positive responses. Then on the other side is they're only mere coincidences, Bernie.
Right.
Random, random happenings.
It's all random, Bernie. And as one statistician so kindly told me from the austere Cambridge University in England, that if you keep studying coincidences, it's not good for your mental health.
Oh. Oh. Right. Or if you put so many monkeys for so many eternities in a room with some typewriters, they'll eventually come up with Shakespeare. I've heard that one too.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a different.
Well, there is random in them, and that's very important because I took probability theory in college. I loved it, and there is a probability hard to estimate still yet because the statisticians make a bit of a mistake. Now, if we talk about the anatomy of a coincidence, it includes two events coming together in a surprising and unexplained way. But they seem to have some meaning to it. It touches the human a little bit and says there might be something here. And it's the ambiguity about what caused it that allows some people to say, there are no coincidences.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody put that as the subtitle of a webinar I'm doing. They didn't ask me, so they just put it out there. There are no coincidences. I've written about that on Psychology Today blog, and it's not as simple as it sounds.
Because that's an ambiguous sentence. Does that mean there are none with meaning, or that everything has meaning, right? You can read it either way.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's interesting that you mentioned meaning and similes and metaphors, because that's good literature. And in my estimation, the universe speaks with good literature. The universe writes well, right? This is the same language that we impart meaning with. Is exactly how the universe engages us in metaphor and meaning and coincidence.
And that's what you're doing with your, well, I'll call them statues. That you're dealing with analogs. It's three-dimensional analogs, and I realized that dance is a form of synesthesia when you turn the music into movement. And you're talking here about archetypal symbols that are resonating around us, and you're saying that it's a language. And this is something I've wondered too. Semiotics is a word that is not worth trying to define because you get more complicated, but it has to do with looking at the meaning in signs. And are they interpretable just like dreams? Are they interpretable? And you're of the opinion that they are. And I have the opinion that some of them are there, but there's a lot of garbage.
Noise.
A lot of noise. Thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of noise in there. So it becomes like a trick to be able to find the symbols in there that will lead you deeper into what you're looking for.
Yeah. But you were talking about defining coincidence as a baseline. Lots of coincidences happen. Some of them are meaningful, and we call that synchronicity. Do you want to continue to define your terms and then?
Yeah. So, and simple terms, synchronicity, a term coined by Carl Jung, mostly is about coincidences that help spiritually, interpersonally, and psychologically. And if you're a strict Jungian and using that, defining the term, that's what they mean by synchronicity, because it's a psychological, spiritual helper. And for the serendipity,
it's time, right? Chronos, synchronicity, right? It's about
that's
the
where it
timing
comes
of
from.
things.
To syn, SYN, together in time. Synchronicity, yeah.
Together.
Like old Chronos, yeah.
What are the different types that you've seen? Because what I really appreciate, and I'd never heard before, is you typing them. You've mentioned the inner GPS, the human GPS. Let's start with that as a type of synchronistic occurrence.
Yeah, good.
Go from there.
It's probably my favorite, along with meta coincidences. But let me define serendipity for a minute before going on to
thank
this
you.
type. And it's pretty simply, it's about more like things and opportunities. Serendipity is finding things you need without knowing how you got there, or finding things you need looking for something and finding something in a different way.
Oh yeah.
You find something accidentally, so they're called happy accidents. That's a simple way of thinking about them. And some people call them, as you were talking about, and it's a Venn diagram of overlap where there probably is some overlap that's worth talking about. But you were talking about types. and human GPS, inner GPS. I would like to see if the two of you and I could talk about what you mean by inner GPS. I mean, it's one thing to say it's like we got the equipment, but I have to ask what's the equipment we're talking about and how do we operate it?
You want to ask us how we think about it? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
You mentioned following one's life journey, and I would say that I get a sense of, I can clearly see the end goal, the destination, but there's no pathway yet as to get there. So you head off that way. It's like you're embarked on the hero journey. And then you get to square one. You go, okay, I'm prompted to do this. I'm trusting the process. I trust. You get there. And then the next hallmark lights up. It's like following breadcrumbs through the forest, the proverbial fairy tale.
Well, it's like in the
And
corporate
so-
world, it's that hunch, that's that
The
thing,
gut instinct.
the gut instinct, that knowingness, that this is what feels right. This doesn't feel.
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to
Yeah.
do, kind of thing.
Or I have actually looked through words on a page and something actually lights up, right? And then it's meaningful and I'm attracted to it and I go, oh, that's a sign. Let me follow that, whatever that means at the moment. Things light up with a light that's not visible, but it's an inner light that you
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
So it's like somebody shining a spotlight to show you the path. You just learn to trust those subtle signals, the still small voice within, right? You just know.
Yeah.
It resonates, it feels right. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, that's a good explanation.
So how do you understand it? How do you experience it?
And you did this to us last time, where you turned it back and
Yeah,
interviewing us.
clever.
He's very good at that.
That's my trick. Asking questions to get out of
You
it.
could have not invited me back. We could have done that too.
No, we like it. It's okay.
Thank you. I like being with you. So I'm glad you did. Well, we are both interviewers, and so that's why you get a little lost. And I did hear what was called a dialogue, which means two people usually are back and forth or something.
Yeah,
So,
right.
yeah, we get to do that because, as I mentioned, I want to do the same question with this little bit of a similarity to you, Laura, in Denver. I want to ask her the same question because she came up with it on her own too, and I came up with it from just having it happen a lot. Is like showing up. So I tested it out one day, and the idea is to be able to get from here to there in a timing and by a method that you can't predict. But you usually do that subconsciously. You don't know you want to get to here, but you have something that tells you, or you kind of know it, maybe. And sometimes you don't know it, or you kind of know it, or you do know it, but then you don't know how it's going to happen. And then you get lost, you let it go the way you're talking about, and you get there by some kind of, you don't know how to do it.
Well, it's
So
going to
that-
be a very circuitous route, so be prepared for that. Yeah.
It could be. It could be a circuit. And a lot of stuff gets in the way too. So that
I mean, it's more like you pick up information on the way or experiences, right? It seems all perfect in the end.
so important that our listeners and watchers notice that people experience let's call it synchronicity because that's you're west of the Mississippi. Let's say that a lot of people experience synchronicity, but they don't know what to do with it particularly, and they do it in different ways. And you have a way of experience meaningful coincidences, Laura. You have a way, and I'm trying to be able to categorize those ways that people have doing it. And they are categorizable. And it's only probabilities, but a good percentage. So you have, correct me any place I'm wrong, please, a way of just knowing you're going to be guided by symbols and signs. And you know which
Or
ones.
just direct knowing, or just intuition, or just serendipitous, or whatever, right?
Let's call it intuition. You recognize, like with the bright light, you don't do it rationally. You do it some kind of like, you do intuitive way.
It's not
But
like you conjure it up. It's like you perceive it when it's there. Yeah.
well, I think there's a bit of conjuring going too.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. You said west of the Mississippi. What do you mean by that?
I mean, there's more likelihood to think in more spacey ways west of the Mississippi.
Oh, spacey.
Yeah,
All
that's
right.
yeah.
Spacey.
Those-
We can argue that, but I won't go there. So, Okay, so tell us of your Denver friend.
That would be fun to argue
Tell us
about that.
about your
But
Denver friend and how she perceived this.
a simple story and hers, and this is more like regular reality things where I think about human GPS. So her name is Nicole um, Froelich, which in German is kind of happy,
Yeah.
uh, and a
Frolic.
frolic kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she's very serious, and
And she's
she
west of the Mississippi in Denver.
and she's in Denver, but she was in Canada, born in Canada. There's a lot of other stories. She's been around the Caribbean. So, but she ended up in Denver. I don't know how long she's been there, but that's where she is. So she's driving down a street, and she gets this feeling that she should turn sooner the street before she usually does, and she doesn't follow it. And the tragedy was she was 5 minutes late. I mean, it wasn't a big deal, but this is the kind of little place where we look at this, where you can see the little versions of this. And Rex Stanford is a well-known parapsychologist who studied just this thing. He called it psi-mediated instrumental responses, by which he meant psi, telepathy kinds of things, mediated my response. So it's instrumental in a way that was useful. So that I ended up saying, hey, I can come up with a better name than that. And that was human GPS, because I was doing that on a regular basis. And I did a little study, as I mentioned, and there are two women that I hadn't seen for a while. And and these were at different times. I wanted to see if I could time getting to their house right when they came out. Now, this looks like stalking to some people. And one of it was kind of like that. And I knew her
It
very
reminds
well.
me of Rupert Sheldrake's experiment with dogs, knowing when their owners think about coming home.
That's in the same direction. And it really is the same direction.
Yeah.
So I put their houses and their beings in my visual,
Okay.
and I have this idea, simulpathy, I call it, being able to feel the pain or distress of a loved one at a distance.
Okay. Common.
Common. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Common. So I think we are able to consciously, subconsciously, really, but a little bit of conscious, just, hey, subconscious, do this kind of thing, and then forget about it.
That's what you mean, our own agency. Yep.
Yeah, well, sometimes I mean that. That's not what I usually mean by that. I can explain it another time. But so I kind of say, this time I want to end up at M's house when she comes out, and I drive up, and nothing's happening, and I just sit there for a couple. No, nothing. Nobody comes out. And I think about leaving, and she gets out of her car. She'd just been in her car doing something. So I said, well, this might be a little something. So we had a nice little chat, and I went home. The other one was later, and I wanted to make it more complicated. So I just said, okay, just tell me where to go and how to do this. So I've picked 4 people's houses before the last one, her house, let's call her C, and go to these houses first and let the timing make it so that I can get to C's house or not. So I went to 4 different places. I got lost. I went away. I turned at the wrong place, and I kind of know where she lives. And so I pull up and the next door, and there's nothing happening until 2 minutes of waiting, she comes out, and she's late for something. And she gets mad at me for showing up like that. So, okay, I can see that part of it too. I mean, the same thing done by 2 different people has 2 different viewpoints.
Okay,
So
this is really interesting. You are setting yourself a test to develop your powers of synchronicity or develop your intuition or human GPS or whatever. You're setting it up to flex that muscle, right? Or to test the theory. I mean, some people will read cards, or you can go online and there will be guess the symbol behind this, and you guess, and there's no emotional tie there, right? It's no purpose. And you're not allowing the wrong turn, which I call the cosmic clock, to engage, to delay you, to help the timing happen, right? So this is a very interesting test that you're setting up. Tell us more.
Oh, it's fun. I mean, this cosmic clock thing that you just mentioned and time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
important that
Yeah.
I'm seeing this more with you. I don't hear much from Paul about this yet. I heard some, but you talk more than you did the last time. It was nice to hear from you doing this show. She is really good, though, Paul. I agree with you.
Well, that's yeah. I've learned that over the
Don't
long
make me
term of our
blush.
marriage,
I believe
lifetime
so.
of marriage.
Yeah, it's a lifetime of. We can do that one another
Lifetime.
time.
Thank you. That was a commitment. Are you recommitting?
I do solemnly swear, yes.
We have it on videotape now too.
Yeah.
You can still deny it. People can still deny that. So what were we talking about?
Talking about you setting up these experiments to actually, I think, also prove it to yourself, but also
Yeah.
flex that muscle, right?
Yeah, I have a problem, Laura. I'm curious. I'm curious as a being, weird, and I'm curious as an outgoing thing.
Right.
And I just like it's just fun figuring out stuff, and that's it's just fun. But it's not just that. I like figuring out stuff practically. I mean, I like saying, I really like saying that I was scouted by the Oakland Raiders for football. That's a professional football team. I like to say I tried out for the Pittsburgh Pirates, and both these things happened. The professional baseball team. I went nowhere, but I like saying that. That's as far as I got. So I learned how to do that stuff by copying people and watching how I moved and trying to see what are the right moves to be able to do this. I was a runner, and I like missing people or having them miss me. And I still had a capacity to get through the holes. And guess what I was doing? I was developing my human internal GPS, because I was running a punt back one day, and five guys missed me. And then I said, hey, those guys missed me. That's when I got hit, because I got out of the
Your
zone.
intellect took over instead of your other muscles of the mind. Yeah.
Intellect, or yeah.
I like to say I'm scouted by the universe to do this, right?
Well, being Oakland Raiders are nowadays the
Yeah.
Las
You can
Vegas.
understand
that was a big
the
deal.
importance
That
of
was a
that.
big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So aren't we developing? Maybe that's the purpose of life, right? To develop, to be tested, challenged, develop our tools. When nothing else works, we turn to the inner set, don't we? Yeah. So
I just saw a message from somebody about concerned about my limiting consciousness to the psychosphere, as I call it.
Okay.
okay, let's get into that. Dory, do you want to go ahead and
Was
turn it
Dory?
on?
Yeah.
Oh, lots of good chat.
So that was a good question.
We'll start with Dory. We'll go to Anne and go back up.
Okay.
Dory, go
Well,
ahead.
This is there's so much to this topic, and my brain is kind of exploding. Well, I tried to say it in the message here. The rest of my question was why limit it to there? If we get into the discussion of human destiny and purpose, guidance and direction, then the scope of consciousness is universal. And I believe that anyway. The universe is conscious, and we are part of that conscious universe. And that's just what I hold as a core belief. Stephen and I started this discussion earlier. He wants to talk about providence. And that opens it up to more than just our little human interactions and what's accidental and what's coincidental, and where is this coming from? The Hindus believed in Jung believed in the what does he call it,
Universal mind.
Sort of.
no, what's the word? Somebody help me.
drawing a blank.
But I mean, it's not just Earth-based, right? That the mechanism maybe is
It
the
can't be.
universe as opposed to just planet Earth and,
Right.
and humans and our biology.
Stephen, do you want to speak up about providence at this point?
I
Stephen, hi.
Hi.
Can I just respond briefly to that?
yeah, go ahead.
I mean,
sure.
because I would like to be able to do that.
Go ahead.
I'm pretty much, I'm a Pisces, in case that means anything to you, and I'm kind of blurry, and I have a Cancer rising and anyway, Cancer moon kind of thing. I'm kind of watery and kind of like flow around, and it kind of makes things kind of like boundaryless and kind of stuff. So I've had to do boundaries. I had to figure out lines between things without not recognizing the bigger thing. So all I'm doing is saying that a part of consciousness is between the ionosphere and the Earth's crust. I ain't saying the whole thing, but I went to some of America's finest schools, ladies and gentlemen, and I cannot conceptualize the universe. So I praise all of you who, when you say universe, you know what you're talking about, because I don't.
Oh, touche. But
Yeah.
But I mean, what I think Dory's also getting at is that how miraculous that the universe created some mechanism for this to tune us in, to happen, to be part of that overall matrix.
Yeah,
Right?
We all have experiences. My experience of synchronicity is my feeling this is a guidance toward purpose. And that's what I'm trying to bring together, what Laura's saying and what you're saying. I'm just trying to.
It is guidance. It is guidance towards purpose. It is guidance towards purpose, and a lot of other things. So you got to make some sense out of them, and it's not that easy. And that's why what I'm seeing. I'm a doctor. Forgive me, but I see health, and I see disease. I look for those two things in people. And so when I look at synchronicity or meaningful coincidence generally, there's some problems with it. There's some problems with the whole thing. And I want to be able to like see the parts of it that need to be paid attention to that are problematic. So maybe we can try to do something to make them not so problematic.
And
So
build bridges.
the psychological part of this is our being willing to be open to what everything that happens is purposeful. And I think that's what.
I can't go with statements like that. And that's just me.
Yeah, but there's got to be a psychological dimension.
No, I mean, not everything. I mean the whole everything that you're saying, this is true. And I don't do that. I say, I think it's nice to find the purpose in various things. And I think there is purpose in synchronicity, but it's not the only thing. It's a problem, and it's other things too.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
Thank
question.
you.
Well, you're good to argue with, Dory, so thanks.
Yeah, and Stephen didn't want to Providence. Did you want to comment as well?
Well, I just Googled the two words, synchronicity and providence, and I got a number of interesting hits on Google. I haven't had time to really look at it.
Okay.
But for instance, one website mentions how easily the idea of synchronicity falls within the paradigm of the Christian worldview, despite being most popular amongst the spiritual but not religious, quote unquote, New Agers. So my idea is that synchronicity by Jung was a slightly de-churchified definition of providence. And you could put the terms of, you could make a spectrum of providence, synchronicity, destiny, fate, and chance on a spectrum of what indicates more personal involvement with the guiding forces of the universe. And that would be a providence. God is a personal being. We are personal beings. And the idea of providence as a force is that you're relating as a human being to another personal being, God, in the universe. So that's the most personal. You could say it's the most full of meaning. And then synchronicity might come second to that. And you can go down the spectrum to where you're on the other side, and everything is completely random and mechanistic, and every coincidence is just no more than that. It has no meaning beyond its simultaneity. So I just want to throw that idea out there, that of the spectrum up between providence and randomness.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Well,
Stephen.
that's what I'm trying to say in my book. I don't call it providence necessarily. There's a lot of different names for it, but universe, God, and the quantum field, some people try to get into a bit.
Right.
And like we're part of a computer game. And there's lots of different ways people have thought about being outside of our own control, that we're being influenced by something outside of us. And we like to think that outside of this is intelligent and loving. We like to think that. And so we do, because that's what we want to think. But let me end this part of it with, you talked about providence and about random. It's that middle part that I'm most interested in, because I can't argue with the people who are random. And I can't argue when you know that it's the universe talking to you. I can't argue with you. But I am studying what I think is in between and there's a lot of variables in there, and that's what I pay
And
attention
that's a
to.
really valuable service, right? All of it's.
Thank you.
I say it's not either or; it's all of the above.
Thank you.
That's
Dory,
right. That's
Dory
right.
and Stephen.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you for the deep thought and the good dinner table conversation, isn't it? This is such an endless topic.
Yeah. Well, and it's also helping us clarify
intriguing.
where Bernie stands and what his research is bringing him to understand, and so we can get a better feel for where we're going in terms of the conversation. So it all kind of makes sense to me.
And Anne says, can you please clarify how, quote, science supports these interesting observations and stories?
Yeah.
So, and Dory mentioned the science as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Wall Street Journal article called up some
me
research and sources you hadn't. What's science? What science do we have to this?
To support.
Yeah.
Well, my science was to find out that a lot of people experience these things. I mean, that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
And now a psychedelic researcher in Baltimore, Maryland, at Johns Hopkins, says that the people, and he doesn't say this, but when you take psychedelics, you're more likely to see coincidences, because you see things more connected. And that sometimes gets you paranoid and crazy, but a lot of times you see the web of how reality works. It's kind of just a positive, negative view of each one of them. And sometimes you see a lot of coincidences because they're part of this web. And when you take psychedelics for the treatment of depression, for example, you're going to have, let me call it a side effect of seeing a lot of coincidences after the experience. It's kind of like what happens with near-death experiences. People have more synchronicity experiences after their near-death experience. It's just, you break your mind open and you say, well, wait a minute, there's something else going on out there. So you start seeing more. And what he reported was that the people who see meaningful coincidences tend to be more positive. It helps them feel better about things. And as you're saying, it helps you feel connected, especially when you're depressed, you don't feel connected. That's usually part of it. So it helps you feel connected with people around you and the greater universe, if you want to use.
Yeah, the greater universe has my back. I'm feeling more safe and secure and well.
That's what happens. So when researchers, researchers do this with psychedelics, they know in London that these things happen, synchronicities, but they don't talk about it. It's not science. So if it's in the Wall Street Journal, is that a step towards making it science?
It's becoming more and more mainstream. Yeah. I want to put Peter Wallman on because Peter creates bliss maps. And I think Peter can also speak to finding one's bliss and opening up synchronicities. I think he'd be somebody you'd want to meet, Bernie. So Peter, yeah.
Hi, thank you. I'm fascinated with this conversation because our work brings around a lot of synchronicity, but I've never really stopped to think about many of the questions that Bernie's raised. So thank you very much, Bernie. This has been fabulous for me. So it's not actually, sorry?
Thank you.
It's not actually bliss maps that we do. We call them passion maps. It could be
Oh, thank
passion
you.
maps.
Yeah.
And passion and passion is just life energy for us. So
Passion is just what? Passion is
Life
what?
energy.
Life.
just life energy.
Oh, bad man. Boy, was the energy high at dance this morning. Oh, man. I mean, I had to get out of there to come here. And I left earlier than I would have because I couldn't take the energy in there anymore. It was just so, it was so good. I mean, it was so good. I was like, had enough. Okay. So anyway, Peter, I had a little energy this morning.
Yeah.
Great. So somewhere in there, there's a sweet spot which actually releases all your energy for dance. So so I really need to put it in perspective because, you know, we've had extraordinary experiences of serendipity. We've worked with thousands of people building passion maps. And pretty much everyone reports a real increase in serendipitous events.
Really?
And we haven't researched this. I mean, we've had people, you know, having serendipity diaries and then just getting so bored with them. Because so much happens.
Wow.
But a couple of things this raises for me is, you know, when do they have that and why do they have that?
Mm-hmm.
The process we do takes people to their creative essence. So they have a deep sense of self that they have for. It's the origin of all these energies. It's the origin of their life. You can call it many things. We call it creative essence. So when they experience all of the things that bring them alive at once, they have a unique experience of self.
Mm-hmm.
And they also come out of the program with a very clear sense of purpose. And I think it occurred to me when you were talking, Bernie, that purpose is a big part of this because, you know, if you notice things that happen, but they're things that actually support what you believe in or what's important to you, or whatever. And I think we might start to do some research into this, you know, as to what people's actual experiences were. But I want to just share a couple of
Please do, but before you do that, I've developed the Weird Coincidence Survey, which is a measure of coincidence frequency, and it's valid and reliable, and it's free. If anybody wants to use the thing. And we use the Weird Coincidence Survey for just on my website to just get numbers on the different kinds of coincidences people experience. So it's there, and I will be glad to communicate with you about that.
Why don't you
and
put it in the chat room? How people
well,
can
he's-
find
I can't. I don't think I'm going
Oh.
to get to it.
I see. Well, I also want to say that you
They
collect
can get
stories.
they can get to it on my website,
Right.
coincider.com. I know that one.
Thank you.
Coincider.com.
COINC. I can put that in the website in the chat.
And
We can-
also
we
you
can do that.
collect these stories. I love the idea of a serendipity diary. That is so fun. I mean, a diary, but they're there, but I mean, a diary devoted just to the serendipity coincidence. But you collect these stories. You invite people to upload them, Bernie. So that was the point I wanted to make as well.
And that's part of the Weird Coincidence Surveys. We encourage them to take the survey and then tell us the story. Tell us a story. But hey, Peter, what I'm interested for you is like I am so fascinated by interpersonal energy, and dance is full of it. Not only interpersonally, but the whole place was like. Now, do you study interpersonal energy? Is that what I'm maybe guessing you do?
Well, we do. We create these maps for collectives and for couples. They're quite transformative for couples. Everything we do sort of starts with purpose. And it seems to me, and I haven't researched this, that there's far more serendipity happens when people are in tune with themselves. They're coming from an authentic place. And they have a clear purpose because that will identify it. And I just want to share my.
I hope that is
sense
true. I really like that idea. I really hope that it's true. The good people are doing serendipity and synchronicity.
Well, then you could
Well, I think
connect
that's true.
bliss
And also, the
and
third thing I'd say
passion
is
and happiness, right? And
the third thing
serendipity.
I'd say is that it happens more to people, and again, not researched, to people who are actively making a contribution to the world.
Now, I
Or,
like this.
or attempting to.
Hey, I'm with you on
can I
that one.
just-
Okay.
Can I just give you my sense making around this?
Yeah, please do.
Whether we like it or not, we're all part of our own unfolding, but we're also part of the universe's unfolding. Right?
Whether we like it or not is right. Yeah.
So we're a part of and whatever you think the universe is, we're part of its unfolding.
Yeah, we're part of the whole
You don't have to
thing.
define it to be engaged in it, right? It's fine.
Oh, profundity. I had just had profundity. Please continue, Peter.
That's why I put into the chat, nothing's right and nothing's wrong, but thinking makes it so. And it's so my sense is we live in these two resonances, if you like. If we are purposeful, if we are coming from integrity, then we are in resonance with the bigger universe. And there's really no boundaries. So things that, a universal thing is happening and it just occurs in our sort of sphere. So that's one thing I'd say. Also, I actually think we live in two realities, and one is a spiritual reality and one is a physical reality. And so, for example, we have a physical body, but we also have a soul, which is the spiritual equivalent of our body. The universe has a physical reality of some sort, and collective consciousness or universal consciousness is, or spirit, whatever the word is the spiritual equivalent of that. So I just think we oscillate in and out of them. And you can show that with science and Heisenberg's uncertainty principle that time doesn't exist under you can't measure time under a certain increment. So what happens
there? Have
there?
a very rich conversation with you that's going to get very big, very fast, Peter. So
what happens there
yeah.
is the spiritual experience. So anyway, I think my sense is it's all very simple. We actually are part of two processes in our unfolding. If we're resonant with ourselves, if we're in integrity and we're clear about what we're doing, and that's in resonance with the bigger picture, things happen naturally. And I just want to give you a couple of experiences I've had. I was thinking about this, Laura, after we spoke. And one of the things we've done is run a lot of holistic retreats. I'll make it very short. I won't go to that one. I just go to one. When I was writing the book, my co-author and I sat down and said, it's not about the book, it's about marketing it. And then we had a meeting. I had a meeting with someone who came in, quite unrelated. An hour later, they had a television show. They invited me on. In 2 hours, I had a television show. From the time I started talking about marketing the book.
Yeah.
One of the best venues for marketing showed up.
That was pretty wild. So my sense of understanding serendipity is we get the universe to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my interest is. How do we get the universe to do the work?
Right. If you were a
anyway, I've probably talked far too much, but there's
that's a great contribution
from what Bernie said. That
right.
Yeah.
I could just
what
keep.
you also gave us was a good prelude for the conversation we will have when we have it. So, and you're our guest.
Sure.
About passion.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That would be
Appreciate
great.
that.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
But
I agree with all that Peter said, because when we are a clear mouthpiece for the impulses wanting to be spoken through us, doors open, things happen. Yeah. You must find that a lot too, Bernie.
Well, it's kind of new to me to think there are other people who are seeing a lot of coincidences and trying to do something that is purposeful and useful. So I
That's a
just
new
appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, go ahead.
Well, no, and I was also, because of the fact that we've had these conversations with Bianca in the past about the power of intention, that there seems to be a connection to
Yeah.
that when we put our attention, we have an awareness of things. It's that old thing that once you buy a red car, you start noticing all the red cars or whatever. There's that thing that we see synchronicity in our life somewhat from because we are attuned to it. But at the same time, I think that there has to be some openness, some intention behind it, that we want to see coincidence, that we do want to understand that life, you have to have hunches, you have to have meaning, you have to be able to find the dots to connect, and being open to the messages, because there's things in my life that I may have missed an opportunity when all of the signals were there, and other times the signals were so loud that I couldn't miss it, that it was like, here it is, this is the path ahead, this is the decision to make. And so yeah, there's that balance of approach.
Do you want to take some stories of synchronicity, Bernie? Wouldn't it be
Sure.
fun? And do you want to comment on how to tell a story effectively?
The most effective way that we have to do today, if it's all right with the storytellers, is that
Yeah.
Paul will limit it to 3 minutes. And
Yeah.
one of the characteristics of coincidence storytelling is people get caught up in their own emotion and their own adjectives and adverbs and try to say all the details.
Right.
But keep that in mind, 3 minutes. And if you can, make up a title that has something to do with the story. Like I just did one called the compliment, and that's the name of it. And compliment was a key part of this whole story. So but didn't tell you what it was. It kind of gave you a little hint as a kind of a teaser into it. So then the key thing in being is to be able to tell the one event and then the other event, and be clear about this event, but not a lot of detail, and clear
Gotcha.
about this event and not a lot of detail, and describe the interaction or intersection, and then pop, you get oop, and then meaning comes out of that sometimes, and the ones who are going to hear today probably do. And what's meaning? Well, Nicole in Denver made clear to me one meaning is just to enjoy it in the moment.
Yeah.
And that's not said often enough. It's just for the thing itself right now.
The beauty of it. Yeah.
It's just the beauty of it. That's the spiritual part of coincidences, is when you can just far out and groovy, or whatever you would say. It's just nice. It's good, whatever words you're going to use. But we look for what is the meaning of this, and we have two meanings of that. Two meanings of meaning, and you might guess that I enjoy playing around with the meaning of meaning and meaning and meaning. It's not what I mean, kind of thing. One meaning is explanation, how did that happen? And the other meaning is, what does it mean for me on my journey, in all the ways that they can affect you psychologically, interpersonally, and spiritually, but also medically and work and doing projects. They're useful and then doing your life's work is what we came up with today. It's that kind of happened.
Yeah.
You got this purpose and you're doing it, and I've got this purpose with the coincidence. So I'm doing it. So you see more coincidences when you're doing that. Apparently, that's what I've learned today, and I think it's true.
Yeah.
So those are the different uses and meanings. And then we try to summarize, and that is the end part of it, is what does it mean to you? And you're not going to be able to say every meaning there is. You have to pick a primary meaning, the one that really got you, maybe about how the world works, which I enjoy, or maybe about how it helped you do something that you needed to do, or get to where you needed to be, or feel or know something you needed to know.
Okay, well, Paul, you look at people who want to raise their hands and share their stories, and you actually want people to set a 3-minute timer. It's going to be like a poetry slam, right? We're going to share incident stories, coincidence stories in short order. And I really appreciate your comments on people's stories, Bernie. But while you do that, I want to share one quick one that we observed that involved an animal, because when an animal is the messenger, it becomes another layer of wonder. And we were sitting around our kiva at the Kwemange Institute. We were sharing about our experiences, right, in this deep inner reverie. Somebody was talking about the hummingbird showing up. The door is open. To the outside, a hummingbird comes in, circles us, stops right in front of her, looks her in the eye for a long moment, and then zips out again. And we're like, oh my God. And then she shows us her in her journal a picture of a hummingbird, a drawing. It was about the hummingbird being a messenger. Birds are long noted to be messengers in mythology and in various practices. Oh yeah. And then I want to also mention really quickly, agency. Is there an agency where, or maybe a time blip or where precognition or something going on in coincidence stories? Because I sat down with you by your invitation. We talked about coincidence on your podcast, and you said, come up with a short coincidence. And I told the story of us, Paul and I, getting stuck on a road trip on a holiday where we stopped at a parking lot. He's already laughing at this.
Go ahead.
We locked the keys inside, and then I'm instructed to have a key on me, a spare key, because we do this a lot. No, didn't have it. So there we are on a holiday. Paul's like, what am I doing? We're due for dinner at my parents', right? We're on a timeline. And I go, Paul, I just see that somebody's going to pull up, have the exact key we need from their car, but it's going to fit our car, and they'll unlock the car. And he's like, yeah, okay, honey, you sit and visualize that. So we did. There was nothing else to do. I'm visualizing this. One car comes up. I ask the people, nope. Second car comes up. I ask the people, nope. What happens with the third car that pulls up?
Well, see, this is one of the most crazy things, because we're driving a GM car, General Motors car, and a guy in a Ford truck pulls up, and Laura goes over and asks the guy to try his key. And I'm thinking, Laura, come on.
But I've been
step
visualizing
into
this
reality.
the whole time.
And the guy comes over and pop, the doors open right up. And it just
Ding,
was
ding,
that,
ding,
yeah.
just like I said.
She wouldn't give up on this idea that someone's going to drive up and have a key to our car.
So
And
did
I'm ready to call
encourage
total.
that to happen? Or was I seeing that
Or just,
was going to happen?
yeah, right.
Well, those are the fun questions.
Yeah.
Did you,
Yeah.
and why isn't it both?
Yeah.
Why isn't it that you
Yes.
kind of know it's going to happen, but it really helps when you know something's going to happen or want it to happen, is to do something about it. So you can maybe predict that it's going to happen, but there's an element of you're having to do something about it. And Jung's scarab is a good example of that, but that's another story. So yes, how much, Laura, you have, according to Paul anyway, and is a good source, a very strong mind.
Yeah,
I think Paul would, yeah.
I agree.
So you probably can send out, I like the thought forms name, the thought form thing. It's energy and information, I call it, but the thought form has got more of a picture in it sometimes. And you sent this thing out and it found a resonant out there, and there the mystery goes. I mean, there's sometimes there's a little help here. We don't have to use providence all the time. Do it yourself, child. Take care of it yourself and see how much more you can do. So you had a little something to do with it. And maybe there was a little help here. There's still mystery involved, but there he was.
But I had utter conviction that this would happen, and I had never wavered with Paul's doubt. The best one, Paul has an interesting superpower. Whenever Paul wants something or needs something to get something done to do with work, it'll show up on his doorstep, like the next day. So the best one was, we needed to outfit an
I don't know if
office
it's
in
the
my
best one,
father's
but go ahead.
business
Okay.
building, and we needed furniture. And I wanted to go run an errand, and right next door to the errand that I insisted we had to run that moment for whatever reason, although the errand never happened. But right next door was somebody a small business giving away.
They were remodeling
the office
entire
furniture.
store, and they put all the store fixtures outside while they're doing the remodeling, and then they put a sign on free. But there was
So I go in,
Yeah.
and I say,
Of course, Laura
"Oh,
goes in and asks.
okay, we'll
Yeah.
take it all." And it fit perfectly.
Yeah.
And one of our employees at the time had brought his truck, his big van,
Yeah.
that day because his other car didn't work. And so
Anyway, yeah, there's
he had
lots.
the van to pick it up in.
Probably more, maybe more important.
I just
part
say
of
that
my-
happens to you a lot.
More important.
Wait.
Go ahead.
That I haven't heard that story in a long time. A guy landed had to land his plane in a place that was far away from everything,
Yeah.
and there was something wrong with it. And yeah, the part was there, and it's a longer story than that. But I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that for quite a long time. So I like the finding the lost. Finding the lost thing in a weird way.
Yeah.
That's serendipity on steroids.
I really do not enjoy any kind of retail shopping because I like intuitively to follow the guidance. The thing will fall in my lap.
does.
Something I'll never find anywhere else.
People
That is so
gift it.
cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
And I think and I will say, coming back to this institute, sharing a little bit about my personal journey.
Yeah, okay.
Even before meeting Laura, I always had this thing that I was going to be a director of an institute, totally without reason, totally without any kind of, why would you even think these thoughts? But it was always there for me. And I
Our
wanted
first
to.
date, you were talking about that.
And so I had written up and put together this whole business proposal back well, I won't say how far back, but a long time ago. And it was back before computers, basically, almost. And so I had this, and I had this company, I was calling it Vision World, and I wanted to put together all the details in the documents of how it would manifest and what it would become. It would be a distribution of education, of information, of knowledge, of publications, of being a
Spiritual
network,
content.
being a network of thinkers, of people like yourself, that can have shared visions and ideas. And so I know a lot of us have this kind of thought, but I kind of stuck to this thing. And I remember telling a close friend of mine, and he kind of laughed at me. He said, "Paul, what would give you the idea that that's what you're going to be doing? It doesn't make sense based on, everything that your tools that you've done in your life, your history or whatever." But it's like, I knew that this was the thing. And so anyway, and then when you meet someone, the founder of this institute, like Dr. Goodman, who speaks 8 languages, travels the world, is this profound researcher and investigator, say, why would you think for a second that you can help facilitate something of that level and participate in that way? But there was just that inner knowingness that I wanted to facilitate it. I don't have to, and never would even for a moment, think of myself as a replacement for Goodman. I see myself as holding the door open for all the other people, the community that takes a village to fill those shoes. So anyway, that's been my story. So that's more important to me than finding furniture. But but that's a good story as well.
You wanted small, practical things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you want to know about a good story, Bianca has a great story of a delivery through accident.
Okay.
On a plane.
Yeah.
Bianca, if you want to tell the story. I want to hear other stories.
Well, we have some others, but okay.
Oh.
And Rex also wants to share.
Yep.
And so Rex and Bianca.
I think Lauren
Whatever.
said to share.
Hello, Bianca.
Oh, hi.
I'm trying to find you on the screen. There you are.
Let's see, I'm unmuted. Yes. Hi, Bernie. Hi. Thank you. Interesting discussion as always. I have just a brief story. I've told it before here. And I was on a journey to the Amazon. And this is one where the environment actually coincided with us. And we went into the Amazon and had brought some money that we had collected for a gentleman down there that was in a wheelchair in the Amazon. And they needed to buy a special wheelchair for him. So we were aware of this and made a collection and took the money down there with us. But we didn't know where he was and how to get it to him. And so we gave it to our Ecuadorian journey leader, and we then proceeded to fly into the Amazon in 3 different planes. And our journey leader was on the 3rd plane, and the weather started changing. And it was basically the canopy was pushing down, and the pilot of his plane said, "Well, I can no longer fly. I'm going to have to find the nearest strip and just touch down." And where they touched down, the man that the money was dedicated for was there. So he laughed and they drank some chicha, and he just basically said, "I think we're just here to deliver this gift from these people that collected it." And so in this case, the weather was working with us, and it cleared up within an hour, and the plane took off and caught up with us. So I was thinking about what Peter just said, and the intention was really just to aid and to help this person who needed this special wheelchair. So I would say, yes, the environment was conducive that day.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. And that whole trip was nothing but one coincidence after another and one synchronicity. So it was beautiful.
Right. And that ties in also to the experience of the traditional people of that area, and how that element of interconnectedness of self is not something that's questioned. It's something that's just known to function. And you've told
it's really, to me, we really have inner senses. We have a number of inner senses, and some, in some school of thoughts, they explore those more. But there are senses that we usually don't explore much or give much credit to in our society. And you're correct, those societies, they depend on those inner senses for their survival. They have to develop them. They develop them in children. These are understanding vibrational changes, right? These are abilities to literally merge with other beings in different ways, and that's just normal to them. So it's just something that I wish, I wish that we would explore that more in our society, especially in young children, right? And I think we're doing so in some ways with meditations, and beginning with meditations in schools now, and mindfulnesses, and it's a step.
I've met your really good friend Vicky, the biologist, and
they were there
I've heard
together.
her tell the story of being at fieldwork in a tribe in the Amazon, and one hunter will make a kill, and all the hunters will show up without any call, without any
communication other than just a knowingness.
Yeah, just
their texting is literally just laying in the Aboriginal world, this is pretty, this is just how they function, where we really telepathically work together. And when we engaged the journey with the Pachamama Alliance into the Amazon, that sense in us was sort of turned on, and we really participated in that to some degree. And there were a lot more stories on that. And so to me, this is definitely a wonderful area to explore.
Thank you, Bianca, as usual.
Bianca. Good telling.
You always bring good things to the table every time.
Your comments, Bernie?
It's a great story. It's a lot. It's human GPS, or inner GPS, that's another way of saying it. Trying to get where you, and it's Laura's clock that helps delay you when things happen. I'm trying to come up with the just simple definitions of patterns, and in this one is finding what you need in a way that you didn't think you were going to find it, and which is what serendipity is. And Paul kind of knows it, and then we figure out how it happens. And the idea of entering into the mind of the jungle and the people in it was just fascinating to hear, because that allowed me to understand that I'm doing that at dance on an increasingly regular basis. So that it's primitive. We're not talking, we're just jumping around, and that would be then communicated out through the jungle and through then to you, so that you're sensitive enough to be able to pick that up, because it requires a certain openness to pick up those energy fields that are energy information that are coming to you. So that's to your credit, and the pilots as well as the weather,
Maybe what we call these moments of coincidence and synchronicity are just the tip of the iceberg, because if we grew up in a culture where we knew we were all connected and paid attention to it, we would just call it daily business, right?
Yes. We've got to get to something like that, because we have to see how interrelated we all are. I call it the collective human organism, and they're each part of this. And you mentioned a cell in the universe. I'm just doing cell in this collective human organism. It doesn't mean we're not something else too. Yeah. Let's start with what I can almost touch. Yeah. There's many layers. I'm a doctor. I mean, I'm inhibited. I can see how that can happen, but I go like
all
steps
sectors.
Like that.
Yeah.
All right, Rex is next. After Rex, we're going to go to. We'll go ahead and go down the list. Rex, you first. There we are.
Okay, I just I was playing with intent one day. I had never really tried it before, and I was going to fly to London the next day. So I just decided I'd intend which seat on the plane I sat. So the only benefit was it was a bit more legroom. Otherwise, there was no benefit and no loss. So I was at the airport, got there in time, and then when they called the plane, there was like a crowd there. And I was absolutely amazed. So there was about 3 back when, as they announced they were ready to board, the attendant just pointed at me, beckoned me forward and said, "Okay, come forward to board." And I was a bit stunned, so I gave my passport and ticket. They stamped it, and I walked out to the plane thinking, this is amazing. Intention clearly works. I got to the steps to get up to the plane, and there was a shout back from the terminal, "Mr. Barker, come back. Wrong flight." So I burst out laughing on the way, went there and got in, and it was the flight to Dublin. It was a Ryanair flight to Dublin, not to London. So I just laughed and sat down again. And then sort of 20 minutes later, the right flight was called. And unbelievably, the same thing happened. I wasn't in the front of the queue, completely different crew and policemen and everything, but they did exactly the same thing, pointed and beckoned me forward. Well, I walked out to the plane and said, this is the universe playing games, but it's hilarious. So I sat down. So that was intent. But then what staggered me even more, then synchronicity or serendipity operated, because 2 guys sort of sat next to me and they were clearly not going to talk to anyone. They just sat there and they opened. But the guy on one side opened his laptop and it was a music manuscript. So I said, "Oh, that's interesting." And we got into a conversation about how music can touch the soul. And I said, "Well, why do you never have a dialogue between the audience and the orchestra at the end of a concert? That would be fabulous to see if they got it." So he said, "Could you do that?" And I said, "Well, yes." I mean, I've never done it, but he said, "Could you do it?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Right, we've got a concert in August, So unbelievably, the guy in the next seat had the venue that we could do it in after the concert, because unfortunately it was needed. And within an hour, we'd organised a dialogue between a world orchestra of people,
Great.
and it was even more amazingly, it was in the home of, it was in the house that the founder of the Salzburg Festival lived at the time when he set it all up. So that blew me away with intent, synchronicity, and serendipity.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's a good flower you got there.
It was.
Because you picked the seat. Because the seat called you and you went with it. You didn't have to question it.
This is the biggest thing. I mean, that synchronicity and serendipity happens to me a lot. But this was the first time I'd actually just decided to try and, in a sense, intend something and see what happened. And it really blew me away, I have to say.
How many invitations do we have that we don't recognize or we dismiss or that we answer to let this magic happen? Yeah. Great story, Rex. Thank you,
Rex. Good contribution.
So you're a musician.
Yeah. We're going to talk more.
So.
Well, let me see. I was going to go to Fred, because Fred made a comment about what he's going to talk about next week and how that would ties in with this topic.
I like that. Yeah.
And hi, Fred. Can I put you on?
Hi there. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yes, just a promo. Yes, next week I'll be talking about divination and shamanism, particularly from my own field work in India and elsewhere. And the stories you're all telling, what you're all talking about here is really tied in with it. I mean, synchronicities are there because there's parts of nature that we don't ordinarily think travel together. They end up traveling together. And that being the case, there are ways to see into this whole process. Anyway, that's my promo. I won't take up more of your time on that.
Yeah, no.
Ways to see into this whole process.
And there's a parrot on your shoulder, sir.
Watch out.
Oh, is that a prognostication or a reality?
I'm not sure. I really don't know.
Right.
Very intuitive.
And as the musicians out there will know, his name is Papageno, and he's been with me for 36 years. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, we look so forward to next week. It's going to be great.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, David had to check out, but so whoever wants to raise their hand and add more to the experiences, it's good because like Bernie said in the beginning, he wants to collect more and more new stories. So we're looking for some new, unique instances of coincidence.
Or just talk about how often this happens to you,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
How often? Let's take a survey. How often do meaningful coincidences happen to you?
And do you feel that it's more than being random? I mean, for me, there's been too many things that just seems like I can't just dismiss it as, okay, another
'Cause
random
it has
item.
an eloquence to it.
An eloquence. Yeah, that's a good word. Yeah.
Yeah.
That works.
So-
I mean, it seems to me that if you truly can put yourself in the moment at any moment, then you will see that you're there because of a whole lot of factors, and you can, but bang, you could just see the coincidences. But that's not the way we normally function.
In the West. Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
But why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah.
Why not? So, Bernie, what are the problematic stories that you have found? And why do you call them problematic? What's the problem with the problematic stories as you identify them?
Well, it's all in the mind, or as Shakespeare we saw quoted, it's whether you make it positive or negative. Some things are negative, I think. And you can turn it into a positive, and with coincidences, sometimes the negative becomes positive, sometimes the positive becomes negative too. So there are problems in the whole sequence sometimes. Sometimes they're all wonderful, and sometimes they're not so wonderful. And the one that I'd like to see how you can make this positive, and I think I can do a little bit. Elizabeth Targ was a medical researcher in San Francisco, a physician, who was doing remote prayer healing with people with AIDS in the 90s. And it was successful. People who were prayed to got, without knowing it even, seemed to improve more than those who were not prayed for. So she got a grant from the federal government to do something similar with glioblastoma, which is a very invasive, fast-moving cancer of the brain. So as they were getting the study together, she was diagnosed with glioblastoma. So the coincidence was she was studying it, and then she had the same thing she was studying. And I feel sad telling the story because she was well loved and well liked, and a lot of people missed her. And you can always say it was her time to go and all the other stuff. But as a human being, it was a sad thing for the field, and it was a sad thing for the people working with her. Now, she might have been trying to tell us something with this. Maybe she was trying to heal herself and precognitively knew that she was going to get this glioblastoma. So this was a way to be able to maybe do something about it, to look at perhaps personal responsibility. But that coincidence is not, to me, a happy one.
Yeah. You mentioned a lot of researchers. You've got a list of them that, though we admire their other work in the sciences or the field or whatever, when they talk about universal mind or they talk about the existence of these other realms, then we tend to dismiss that part of what their work is. And yet it's interesting that these credible people also are thinking in this way. So it takes it out of the woo-woo or the fringe, and really the fact that they're embracing this mindset, this acknowledgement of these connections, these deep connections. It helps to bring that into the mainstream. And yet they find they can't talk about it openly. Our society doesn't really permit it openly. Can you tell us about some of them? One of them was Margaret Mead's first husband. Do you want to talk about some of the people that you cite, their research? Hey, if they think this is paving the way for credibility.
Why his ideas were not accepted, you're saying?
Well, do you want to mention some of them that you cite in your book? And I'm just saying it's interesting to me that they're credible over here in this work, but when they talk about this connective two realms, we tend to put that aside in our society.
Well, I have to go back and look at my book because that part of it nobody's ever asked me about, and I haven't gone over it. But I'm right in the same area. A lot of people bring it up. What is it? what is bigger than us? And consciousness is a term that gets a little bit of support within science, but Laura, it's a long way of. I don't want to do too long about belief, but if you ask me what my research now is about, it's about how to think about helping people change their beliefs. Remember, please, that I was a psychotherapist. I still am. And I'm helping people change the way they think about themselves and their world. So it's what I'm doing with the meaningful coincidences, is trying to be able to shape different views of how people think about things. And one of the things that is so interesting of talking with you and the people here is the firm belief in what I also would call God. It can call it universe, but it sounds a lot like God without being anthropomorphized. And there, a feeling that the people who have mystical experiences go through, of the feeling of oneness. But Chris Beisch, who was a professor of religion at Youngstown State University, did something silly in the 70s and 80s, at least it would seem to us, where he took, under controlled conditions, I'll explain them, 73 times, he took high doses of LSD.
Mhm.
And he was not interested in the healing capacities of psychedelics. He was not interested in the oneness part, because you can just get lost in it and enjoy being part of the whole thing, and that's a thing. And it's really amazing to have that experience. I've had touches of it, but I tend to be somewhat practical, and he was too. He was trying to understand the greater consciousness, and allowed himself to, and was permitted and open to get into lots of different layers, which are hard to understand, but came back saying, we have to do something about global warming. We have to do something about the things going on this planet. And it's very nice to be able to go out and be the oneness thing. And it's very nice to talk about how we're being guided, but we have to know we're being guided and have to know we have a part in it. And we've got a problem here, ladies and gentlemen. We are burning up our habitat. And all of you know that. So what I'm trying to be able to say is that we are connected, each as cells in this giant human organism, collective human organism, and we need to find our purpose, just what you're talking about, what each individual purpose is, because it looks like we've got them, and also find out how I can be connected with other people, almost like we want to all be part of the liver, if that's our function, is doing what the liver does, or parts of what the liver does. So find out where our tribe is, it's called, but this is more like where we share a purpose, and what we have is complementary with each other, that we can help each other and connect through our similarities and our differences. That's what I'm doing.
Right. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Watch those doors open, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's thank you, Laura. Thank you for your heartfelt thank you. That I am convinced, because excuse me, I like calling myself an idiot. And the reason I call myself an idiot, because I get it, be an idiot when I don't know something that I should have known, which is really a lot that happens, but it's a way of sharpening my thinking. And I don't mean it the way it actually sounds, but I'm trying to be able to say that we are all connected and we have ways to be able to do it, and that synchronicity is a major way, or a minor way, or Bernie's way, or I like saying it's a good way. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know that much, but I kind of, the way it looks to me is like meaningful coincidence can help you find your purpose and help you find your connections to the people who are like you. That's my whole thing.
And like you're saying, I mean, you're saying it as a tool, as a means by which global consciousness, a means by which we have a better recognition of the life that surrounds us, and the whole ecosystems that we're tied into, I think is what you're saying as well.
It's so, and I'm so glad you talked about that hummingbird story. You didn't give me a chance to say
respond.
About another guy who's told me the story of a hummingbird coming right up to him. He had a hummingbird feeder, and the hummingbird is this far away from his third eye, and then the hummingbird disappears. And he says, I think I'll go over to to see what the hummingbird house. There was no food in it. So there's no symbolic thing exactly. It was like, feed me. But it's also, you're not paying attention to me enough because you didn't look what was going on out there.
Exactly.
Hummingbirds will do that. If their feeder's empty and they're usually buzzing around it, they will come over to where you're sitting outside and enjoying and going, trying to signal you.
Yeah. I've had that with some mosquitoes that I was house sitting. These two mosquitoes got caught in my house, and it was winter, and I didn't want to kick them out, and then I realized that they die after 6 weeks if they're female, 2 weeks after they're male. They hung around for 5 months until spring came, but I was feeding them the nectar of blueberries. They like nectar. Blood and blueberries worked for them, and they would fly around in front of my face around feeding time, and one of them would, and then I forgot the blueberries. So they were doing the same thing.
Oh my God. So you're actually cultivating mosquitoes, and they didn't bite you for the blood because you gave them blueberries. You got to read
I gave them,
With All Life by J. Allen Boone. Yeah.
I gave him some, but then people would come over to my house, like my younger son, and he said, I didn't come all the way here to get my blood sucked by some mosquitoes. As I was telling him, no, don't do
not slap my pets.
That's right.
Well, we've drawn some interesting connections here. So with Peter and passion,
right,
and life's purpose and bliss, and we'll have more about that, Peter, coming up, and with doors opening and divination, Fred, next week, and being in dialogue with the universe, right? We are finding our path, but there's purpose to it, which is we have a role to play. And we like to quote, who is it? Marshall McLuhan. There's no passengers on Spaceship Earth. We're all crew here.
We're all crew,
we all have a job to do. We need to come together. And maybe even dialoguing on this is a piece of that, we hope, right?
And contributing to this whole
hold hands in this mission.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Well, contributing to this whole avenue of human consciousness and the beyond, this whole idea that we're tapping into a field is part of what is fascinating and interesting to us, and why we see this institute playing a role in terms of at least having the discussions, looking at where the roadmap can take us, what we are finding out there, where there is this interconnection of life that goes beyond what we know already, that is something we're still trying to understand. And then we look back to the Aboriginal people, indigenous people, ways of people who lived under the stars and had a deep resonance and connection and an openness to other aspects of what the human experience can be.
That's so cool about just listening to some of the conversation here. And again, Aborigines, I've read about them and got a sense for that person who did a walkabout with them, kind of got dragged into it. So I got a sense of what it's like out there, and had a feeling about the dream thing, as they call it. But you get to other cultures, like to Africa and other places that I don't get to. I'm just an American here, maybe doing a little Europe, but you expand. And what I like to hear from you, and I did hear from you, is that this potential of synchronicity being symbolic, being communicative, just as your poses are communicative. There's communication in the shape of these coincidences, semiotics, that you're determining the potential meaning behind them. That's if you can keep helping with that, and that's such a good idea, really, is get it out of like English and into symbols, into symbolic language.
Or direct experience.
Yeah.
What?
Or direct experience as well.
Yeah.
That's it. That's direct experience is good. We're all for that. But I like the symbols too. I mean, I'm kind of this way, but the direct experience informs the symbols, and the symbols informs the direct experience for me. As I've done with tarot cards, just playing with tarot cards and seeing them things and studying them. That's it's an interaction. Then I can apply that to how the world works.
Appreciate what you said. You said if we're going to invoke the universe in this, we darn well better know what we're talking about. Well, of course, we don't at this stage of a physical universe. But I want to defend those of us who invoke the universe has my back, or I'm in touch with the all because that is my direct experience in these very lucid moments of inner reverie, and our ancient cultures did as well. I want to defend that language and that position by just saying we've lost any other language to describe our direct experience. So we have to use the mythopoetic languages. We don't have one. There's a scientific language. There's this other language of the arts, right? I tend towards the latter, but also that I appreciate the perspective. I appreciate understanding all the stakeholders involved in what we do. I appreciate the personal relationship that we can develop from our where we are to the all. We can engage that through our language, through understanding, through the various methodologies of experience, right? And so we can engage that. So why not talk about it? Because that's what it feels like. And that perspective allows us to live a larger life and a more meaningful life. I want to dance on that stage. I think that I appreciate the early cultures because they invoke that as well, as above, so below. You cite that in your book, Bernie. And so it really means the all, from this little tiny point where I am to the all. That's a wonderful stage to dance upon.
And I understand what you're saying, and I have more glimpses of it than you have experiences of it. And this is the way I'm doing it. And you're doing a very important task here. I'm doing something that's a little different. It's the same general idea, but it's so important to be able to say, this is you and this is me, and we're different, but we are in this together, like the Walrus Beatles song, if you recall that we are in this together, but we are also separate because we like being our own individual selves, whatever that means. I mean,
we
it's
all
kind
have
of
our
fun.
own tasks to do, and you're building this beautiful infrastructure of understanding. At
a lower level than you are.
No, a different level, a shared level. The reality is that's why we call it conversation for exploration.
Yeah.
We don't want to rely just on our own knowledge and research, and it's just boring without engaging as many.
We say all of the above is
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
And people with contrasting opinions about the whole thing. Just talking about consciousness itself could be a lifetime.
Endless.
Yeah,
It's
it would never
endless.
stop. It will never stop. Yeah,
We enjoy that conversation,
Yeah,
but
but, yeah,
we
it
want to
never
add
ends.
more
Yeah,
texture, more
exactly.
granule to it. So
Well, I come away with this because I don't do this just for trying to say, look what I know. It's like I come away with this, seeing how you're thinking better. It's taken 3 times for me to be able to get a clearer idea about how you go from here to the universal or to the universe and the experience you have of that. And how you feel guided by that connection, and that synchronicities appear to you in your heart and your mind to be part of that whole connection with your purpose and your activities here.
Yeah.
And I respect that. I mean, I have that in me too. It's not what I'm doing. I have it in me. I recognize what you're talking about is really very important because I have a God sense in me. I believe there's something that's endless light that's out there and that has something to do with having us be here. But I like doing it like in steps because, I'm just having a good time being at where I am. I kind of like most of the time. I mean, it's just fun doing this one.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this one, it's like we all got a thing.
I appreciate that you dance and that the body has a purpose in this as a platform to be that bridge between his spirit and matter, as many people invoked earlier. I'd love to hear from Bobby.
Sure. So just kind of recapping, what I've been hearing is this process of awakening awareness of coincidences, which feels like kind of the foundation that Bernie's touching on. And as you said just a moment ago, building the infrastructure, opening those doorways that then allow for this greater unfolding, which some of us are experiencing already, for these new possibilities, for purpose, for life to unfold with greater grace. And we do it in community. It's through those interconnections that amplify what we're able to do and see and experience from within. Then when done in community, it amplifies and ripples. But it seems like, Bernie's mission is to build that basic infrastructure to bring coincidence into a more common currency.
Common currency. I like that.
Using the tools that will ideally gain respect from, both those who are on a more skeptical path and those who are like, yeah, we're here with you.
Yeah.
Boy, are you with me? I
said.
mean, you did a really wonderful summary. And there's only one little thing that I think is important, which I think you would have said. It's we do develop our own thing and we develop our connections to other people, but we also, they help us. But I heard the implication that it's part of our job is to help the other person too. You have that in you, I know, but I didn't hear that as loudly as you probably think it being, and probably do. So it's hard in this narcissistic society of America to recognize the value for everybody, to make it nice for the other person. Like I was a little critical of a guy at dance on Friday, just like I got macho at him for a second. He said Frank Sinatra. No, it was Casablanca I was talking about. I was talking about, of all the gin joints in all the cities, all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine. And I was thinking, you must remember this. So he says he called it Frank Sinatra. And I got like that. So I try to say, how am I going to like
coincidence, isn't it? Yeah.
How am I?
Well,
I gotta hear
you
that.
picked up on that because Bobby runs workshops on this very thing.
Oh, yeah.
This very finding your purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, that was a great, and actually, yeah, you couldn't pay for such a nice, clear way of explaining your work. Bobby really added to the overall view of what you bring to the table.
Oh, you really got it. You really nailed it.
Yeah.
Checks in the mail, Bobby.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have a way that I can get a clip of what she just said?
Sure. Yeah, and we're gonna post the whole interview, by the way, by the time we're done. But yeah.
Okay, and I gotta get it because I got somebody sending out these little reels on Instagram. You know that thing.
Yeah.
I go, okay, but that was a good one, Bobby.
All right.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah.
Okay.
I want to say that it's really interesting for us because our first question to people is, what is the quest that you're on? How did you find this work? How did you decide this was your work, and what is your ultimate purpose in it, right? We always want to start with that.
Right.
And we've heard the most wonderful stories. And if I have to look back at most of them, Bernie, they involve synchronicity. Like just a couple of weeks ago, Lauren Olson described founding a huge archive for the Nez Perce tribe, of which is his neighbors.
The music archives.
Through his university that he taught at, because he rented a particular house. And he found the particular owner of the house who had this start of an archive in his basement and said, go check this out, right? And so there launched a career. So it's so interesting how you mentioned the importance of finding our life's work, our contribution. Peter mentioned that. We're going to hit more on that. And how do we build that? How do we get started? How do we understand the road signs that point this way? That when these doors swing open, when the meetings show up, right? And I have to say that I haven't answered all the promptings, and I've missed some important ones in my life because I didn't walk through the door, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and it's important to trust those, right? Can we trust the process? Mm-hmm. Can we follow the promptings? Can we? Yeah.
Maybe on a personal note, having a gal from the northwest of the United States, Seattle, and a guy from Maine on the East Coast, somehow meeting up and fulfilling each other's potential dreams and goals and aspirations and missions. There's no way in the world I can do it without you. It's always been that
No
way.
way I could do anything without you.
Yeah, I know.
We're
I agree.
helpless alone.
I agree with that.
Oh, he agrees. Thank you. And it's true.
Oh,
Oh, dear.
boy.
Wow.
Well, Bernie, you've done it again. You've made us really think deeply and passionately
Yeah.
about these interconnectedness of life, and whether there's randomness, and some of it is just purely random, and other times there seems to be that meaning, that meaningful coincidence that you're talking about. And that's something that makes sense to me. I mean, it's something that,
Breadcrumbs through the forest, right?
Yeah,
Who lays them
exactly.
down for us?
yeah.
Well, one of the things you can help me with in doing this is that you first recognize, as you mentioned, Laura, that these meaningful coincidences happen a lot as people are doing their thing. And when they tell you their stories, you often say, well, was that that was a synchronicity? And they're not identified necessarily as that,
Oh, I
but they
see.
are told. So I'm
Yes.
asking you to identify some of these stories as meaningful coincidences or synchronicity or serendipity, just to increase people's thinking about them.
I see.
Whether
Yeah.
they say this, but the way they tell it, it's really obvious that happenstance put them.
Yeah, the way they tell it.
You know, it's like a ping pong ball, like with these little ping pong balls, or what do you call it? Whatever. And something will guide us or push us this way or that way.
To amaze.
And also, I like the circuitous route. I'm not, hey, from A to Z, I have to go the most direct route, because we pick up so much experience or insight or friendships or lessons or helpful tools along the way, right? I mean, I see it as the hero's journey, that we set out and we're guided and we have to find our way through the threshold guardians, and we are always going to face a couple dark nights of the soul and face up, and we're going to, but you know, when we win the prize, which is our destiny, knowledge of our destiny, then we run with it and share it with the community. I mean, it's all laid out for us. I'm not saying there's no free will. I'm saying there seems to be, when you really truly look, there seems to be a larger hand that co-writes our story with us, that nudges us, that presents opportunities, that whispers in our ear, that lights a pathway as needed, right?
Yeah. I mean, the hero's journey says it all. I think that's a great way to mind
Thank
map
you,
it.
Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
So,
We were going to have him on, but he wasn't available. He's been gone for a while. Yeah.
yeah, wow.
All right.
So, and what did we not cover, Bernie, that you want to add here?
I just found this a lot of fun and interesting to do, and I'm glad to get to know each of you better, and to see at least how I can think, how you can help me, and I can help you. Probably you expanded my mind with the skirt thing and with talking about the Aboriginal and the jungle story. Those are all, and the feeling of it. So I get to expand my experience by interacting with you. So I thank you for that.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We're going to keep hearing your synchronicity stories as they show up.
Right.
Bernie's website,
Coincider, C-O-I-N.
coinciders.com is a place where he collects your stories.
Yeah.
So he's gathering them up.
Yeah. Berry Beitman. You can't miss it.
And Bobby's saying we're in a living field of co-creation. Yeah, it's a dance, right?
Yeah.
Need a dance partner. It's a dance. We always have one.
All right.
Marge.
All right,
Thanks
everybody.
so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye, Bernie. Let's talk
for
some
your
more. Let's have some more conversations.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Oh, you'll see a podcast with Paul and I on Bernie's website.
Yeah.